never encountered readings like this before.
4 phases locked and ready to fire, sir.
Hi guys, this is Terror of Terror, bringing you another episode of Behind the Numbers. Today I'm going to do something a little bit different. I want to talk about rules of engagement, or maybe it's called server rules or code of conduct. I don't know. It really depends on your server and the community on your server and what rules that they've kind of come up with that they want to collaboratively follow and enforce. So the first thing to keep in mind is we are not talking about rules that have been established by Scopely. This isn't the terms of service agreements or anything like that. Nothing that is official from Scopely. They are not enforcing this. So if somebody's breaking similar rules that may exist like this on your server, a proper course of action is not to go to Scopely's Discord channel and post something saying, hey, I need Scopely's help. You need to ban this guy. He's killing me. Maybe he killed you while you were on a mining node, and on your server you're not allowed to do that. It's a server rule. It is not something that was created by Scopely. So there is no official enforcement. And so what we can do is let's take a look at one of these primary rules of engagement that exist on my server, just to kind of get a feel of what I'm talking about. And it's probably something similar that exists on your server. Now, these are things that are followed by the user community, and it's really up to the player as to whether or not they're going to follow this. There are some players that don't follow any of these rules and just go out and do whatever they want. Now, of course, there's ramifications to that because there is a large group of players who do follow these rules and strive to enforce them. And so what will end up happening is you might have a lot of other players getting together to essentially hunt you and prevent you from being able to continue to progress in the game because you're not following these rules of engagement or server rules. So one of the primary rules of engagement that we have on our server is around mining, and it's very important. There's a lot of mining events in this game. Yes, it's maybe too many, right? Seems like every other week we got a mining event. So to try to minimize conflict and encourage a more civil gameplay, there are some rules of engagement that have been established on our server when it comes to how you can obtain a mining node, when you can attack another player on a mining node, things like that. So, and as luck would have it, as I'm recording this, I am currently sitting on a mining node and my clock is running down right now. And so I'm going to need to reset this node because one of the rules, and we'll go over it in just a second, on my server is if a player is sitting on a 0 node, in other words, if it's zeroed out, and so right now I am about 11 seconds from zeroing out. If I've zeroed out, another player can come and kill me and knock me off that node, and I really have no reason to get upset because that person is really just following the rules of engagement. However, I am going to reset this node, and so I will prevent that from happening. So I've reset the node, and now I'm looking good. So let's go ahead and look at the rules of engagement related to mining on my server, just to give you a feel for the types of rules that can exist. And what I would strongly encourage each of you to do is to figure out what are the rules of engagement on your server. And I definitely would encourage you to follow them. You don't have to, of course. These are not Scopely rules. There are those individuals that like to go rogue, but again, there is always a response and some ramifications to that. So let's go ahead and look at the mining rules on my server. Okay, so here's what we're looking at. We're looking at the rules governing when a player can attack another player on a mining node, so that, to try to take that node away. And this is specific to low warp systems. There's a little bit of different rules in higher warp, so 40 plus warp systems, but we won't go into that. Again, I'm just trying to give you an example of the rules on my server. They're not necessarily the same on yours. You'll want to understand what your server's rules are specifically. But on mine, there are certain situations when it's perfectly acceptable by the broad user community on our server, perfectly acceptable when you can attack another player on a mining node to try to obtain that mining node for yourself. One situation is going to be when the player's ship, so the opponent, his ship is sitting on a zeroed out node. So what that means is he's exhausted all the material on that node. It's reading 0. He's no longer mining anything on it, but he's still sitting on it. He's probably away from game. Maybe he got caught up in a meeting. Who knows, right? All I know is he's not mining anymore. He's just sitting there. So perfectly acceptable to kill him, take that node, reset it, and then go ahead and start mining the material yourself. Second condition would be if the ship has exceeded the protected cargo limit. Right? Because again, this is PvP and it's about trying to obtain resources. So if somebody's mining materials on a node and they've exceeded the amount of protected cargo, so That means if you were to kill them, not only would you take the node, but you would actually be able to steal some of the material that they had mined. If you're able to do that, that's perfectly acceptable to go ahead and take that node. This encourages players to jump off the nodes to unload their cargo, and then by the time they come back, maybe that node has been taken by another player who now has an opportunity to mine material themselves, right? So tries to allow multiple players to get into the game and get the materials that they need. Third condition would be is if the ship has reached its total cargo capacity. Again, similar to the zeroed out node idea, where if you've reached the total cargo capacity, you're no longer mining anymore. So you're just sitting on the node, taking it up, and you're not actually getting any material out of it. And if that's the case, then you're going to get killed and someone's going to take that node so that they can start resuming obtaining and abstracting material out of that node. The last condition is if the ship is of a combat class. So mining is for miners. It's for mining ships. It's for survey/mining ships. It's not for explorers. It's not for interceptors. The rate at which these types of ships mine is so painfully slow. It would take you days to get the amounts that you'd get if you had been using a mining ship. It's such an inefficient use in terms of that particular node that is perfectly acceptable for another player to come in here and kill your explorer if you've just been sitting on a node. So those are the 4 conditions that are perfectly acceptable to go ahead and kill a player and take their node. Doesn't mean that other player is going to be happy necessarily. One of the things that we try to recommend is that if you're going to kill someone on a node, that you message them either just before you do it or at a minimum afterwards and let them know why, right? Because if they're on a 0 node, for example, they might not realize they were on a 0 node. They might not realize they hadn't been gone that long, right? And so when they come back, they see that they're dead. They might assume they weren't on a 0 node, and if there's been no communication, it can just lead to unnecessary conflict. So it's always a good habit after you've killed someone and taken that node, go ahead and send them a quick chat and say, hey, sorry, you're on a 0 node though, okay? If it's a situation where they are over the protected cargo, it's pretty obvious because they're going to look at the battle log and see that, hey, you know what, they stole some material from me. Clearly I was over cargo, so that's okay. So the last thing I'll finish off with is these rules sometimes will have some abbreviations, right? Some acronyms or whatnot that kind of fly around. So on our server, we refer to our rules as ROE, or rules of engagement. And if a player gets killed on a mining node and that player was under the protected cargo, that's referred to as a UC kill, or under cargo kill. So under protected cargo kill, or UC kill, that's a bad thing. I've heard other players refer to it as a DK. I don't know what that stands for, but again, it's going to be different depending on the server you're on. If you've killed a player and that player had some material to steal, that's referred to as an OC, or overprotected cargo kill. So if I've killed somebody OC, that's perfectly fine. It's perfectly acceptable. So you'll get to know the abbreviations and the specific rules of engagement of your server, and that will help you have a better game playing experience. It should reduce the amount of conflict. There's already enough conflict on our server even with these rules. I feel like it hasn't minimized things to the point where it's no longer truly a PvP game. It absolutely still is. I do know that there are some servers that don't seem to follow any rules of engagement. I can't even imagine what that would be like. If this is something you found informational, helpful, or if you feel like it will be helpful and informational, especially for the newer players, maybe you've been somebody who's been around a long time, so a lot of this is old news to you, but this is a video that you now can share to the newer players when you want to explain rules of engagement, kind of how that goes. You can just refer them to this video. They can watch it and they can get right up to speed, so you don't have to sit there typing over and over again the same thing as new players continue to join your alliance or whatnot. Please smash the like and subscribe. I appreciate it. And remember, if it gets a little bit too heated out there, just go ahead and pop a shield, take a break. Sometimes we all need to step away.